Hey, PreSales Collective, it's your host, James Kaikis, and today I'm going to be joined by Ajay Jay, co-founder and CEO of Prescale. The topic of today's episode is the disparity between technical win and business win rates. The technical win is a highly debated aspect of the pre-sales function, and Ajay and Prescale are tackling it head on. And so today's episode, we're going to really dive in to Ajay's philosophy on the tech win, talk about his learnings throughout his career and how he's applying them to the day-to-day in our profession. This is a great conversation to see how things have come full circle. Ajay attended a John Care workshop years and years ago where he began creating a thesis as it related to the technical win and has since continued to build out a product that centers on the technical win and the business win within an organization. Enjoy. Ajay, welcome to the PreSales Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for asking. I hope you are well as well.
I'm talking pre-sales on the podcast. Does it get any better than this? I want to say congratulations on your success. I've gotten to know you and heard of Prescale before you were really in the market, when you were still doing some diligence and research and in stealth. You've since had some great successes. And one of the things I want to highlight that is probably my favorite thing that doesn't necessarily relate to the product, but you sent some of your team to the Spring World Tour. Why did you do that? That's amazing.
So, James, if you recall our times when you were working at Salesforce, that's when I also started evaluating and reaching out to the community for PreSales Collective. And very early on, our journey has been more in parallel. While we were trying to build a global community, I was trying to solve for pre-sales, and pre-sales are everywhere. So we just wanted to make sure that us being global, meaning East Coast and West Coast, uniting together the hands, let's say East and West joining. And that's why we primarily wanted us to be there, meet the folks who are in the function and understand what pre-sales actually means to them, and then travel with them along their journey and make their process a lot easier and better in the longer run.
I love that. I think I called it out that Prashant's journey was almost 9,000 miles. So he had the longest commute of anybody for any event that we go to. So I really appreciate that. I love that you've talked about building in parallel and really trying to, aid the community on their journey. And actually, one of the things that you do that I do want to highlight is your Pre-Sales Times newsletter. 2 years ago, before PreSales Collective started and pre-pandemic, it was so hard to find anything that was a resource for our profession. And now, like yourself, there's starting to be more and more people that are highlighting this amazing work that's happening out there in our profession. So tell me a little bit more about your newsletter. Why'd you do it?
Absolutely. So I was a pre-sales engineer myself, and I was working in pre-sales for a longer period of time. And at times, work gets overwhelming and we will not get the time to read, learn, or grow as an individual person, or even to understand what's going in parallel in the function so that I can be on top of my skill set itself. So while work switching across multiple streams just consumed my focus, and as a professional, it was really difficult for me to be in sync with the community and what the community had to offer. And what I did as a personal exercise is started skimming all the valuable resources for my improvement. And this led me to author the newsletter PreSales Times. It's the world of pre-sales in just 60 words. So I recommend materials to engineers for them to learn, and which directly impacts their productivity and output. And as we all crossed through this pandemic, we started to consume quicker, in very few items deeper, and also develop faster. And that's what we are doing at PreSales Times too. So consume quick, involve deeper if you really like the content, and develop fast with the content so that you are able to be on top of whoever is offering the content and then move on with the function.
Spoken like a true founder. I love it. That's fantastic, Ajay. And, I think, again, it's amazing to see this pre-sales ecosystem forming, and we really take our role in helping elevate the profession very seriously. So keep up the good work. And you brought up your career a couple times. Let's talk about your pre-sales journey. What got you to where you are today?
So after graduation, there wasn't a pre-sales academy for me to sign up, but eventually I ended up joining as a pre-sales consultant for Freshworks. And after my training with the product, I was put into the sales team. I was very new to sales, and I did not know head or tails on how I'll have to start my whole journey. But very soon, what I found out was with the product knowledge from my pre-sales training, I was slowly able to close a lot of deals. And pretty soon, I was topping the charts of sales reports. That's when I realized pre-sales is a superpower that has not to be messed and then to be sharpened at every interval when a product release is coming up to. So that gave me a huge leeway in terms of being a sales hybrid during the initial time of my career. And very soon, I was responsible for building sales and pre-sales synergy for one of the other products within Freshworks. And that's when I realized how pre-sales can be optimized and locked in with the sales process to deliver exceptional value whenever the prospects were evaluating the tool. Even be it a 10-member team or a 100-member team, the value delivering was on point when the pre-sales were given the right set of instructions from the prospects themselves, by the way. In 2019, moved to RFPIO, pretty small team. I was the first hire outside for them outside the US market. And I took the sales hybrid role. Pretty challenging. Did both business closure and technical closure for enterprise customers. And one of the customers really helped me understand how effective the relationship building part is, how important whatever I do has to be documented through the overall journey. And finally, this particular document really helped us implement the whole of RFPA ecosystem within their 10,000 member company in 15 days. And that was something that really I took as an outcome. So during this journey, there were tools, there were mostly customized CRM options which were available. And yet again, I didn't want pre-sales to be an option. I wanted to be the mainstream function that can actually be in the spotlight, dance to the sales whenever six-figure deals got closed. And that's how I connected with you before you started pre-sales collective. And that's how I started my journey.
I really appreciate you sharing. And I mean, the hybrid role is a really tough role. And knowing that you were at both RFPIO and Freshworks very early on, I love that. And I love hearing pre-sales professionals' journeys who then go and start their own companies from things that they saw, which is a perfect transition into our topic, the disparity between technical win and business win rates. Let me just level set before we get into the podcast. I feel like from my purview, the technical win is one of the most debated aspects of the solutions consulting role. And I've heard so many different opinions on this and perspectives on this. And I know that you and I have even had this conversation, which is why we're going to talk about it on the podcast. And so I am really curious to dive into this to give our audience a sense of where you believe the technical win and the gap is between the business win and really how you're trying to solve that. Because again, this is a very hot topic and I can't put my pulse on what the right answer is. So for those that are maybe not familiar with the technical win or want to learn what your definition of the technical win is, let's talk about defining the technical win and why organizations utilize it.
To start with the debate on technical win versus business, it's existing from the time where oracles were selling solutions to organization leaders. And back then, pre-sales were just demo engineers trying to put up something, present it, and then make sure that the deal gets closed. And we have traveled lots from that particular aspect in terms of how pre-sales is evolving itself. Though sales is constantly trying to adapt to the new market trends, pre-sales are still not put in the limelight for them to be part of the whole sales organization. And my primary take is sales organizations being revenue centers have pre-sales, which is one of the defining cogs of the whole sales process, are still considered as cost centers, which doesn't match the whole equation of how the sales organizations should operate. And from my personal experience, technical win is just an account status in the whole sales lifecycle itself, wherein the prospect understands and accepts the product as a solution and also understands that the proven aspect is more valuable than the competition itself. So technical win in terms of the customer usually means that they're pretty satisfied with whatever the product feature is being offered. And the conclusion also says that it fits their complete ecosystem in terms of agreeing to their organizational levels too. So to put it in really simple terms, technical win is not a parameter for measuring performance. It's a parameter to understand how the product works for the customer, how the customer likes using the product during the evaluation window that we get, and how easier it is for them to take the decision. Because this indicator, if it's green, it means that they are ready to move ahead in the sales process. So this is my take on technical win itself.
So as a solutions consultant, I'm in a sales cycle. I know it's competitive and we feel what we have is technical win. The prospect feels good with our product. They believe it can solve their problems. Question is, can our competitors also have technical win at the same time that we have technical win?
Absolutely. So I'm a big F1 fan, and Netflix is also doing amazingly on Drive to Survive. So starting there, every car in the F1 grid is still the same, but there's only one winner and there can be one champion at the end of, say, 20 races in the season. So though every spec can be the same, though every team can give 100% on every circuit at every given point in time, there is still a minute difference that makes the driver go ahead the competition and then able to deliver that particular win. So if the F1 champion is a sales win, whatever is being done in the offices or say the engineering, the mechanics, whatever they're doing is the technical win that delivers the sales win. So if we consider this analogy and then put into SaaS ecosystem, manufacturing, construction, anywhere, everyone, whatever they are offering, the value remains the same. But how they do it and what defense and what tickers they are using in order for them to identify this and then move along makes a lot of difference when they are working with the teams of prospects itself.
AJ, I'm impressed with the F1 analogy. F1 is blowing up all over the world right now. So it's only fitting that you use that. And I think that's a really good perspective. I'm going to get pretty tactical. I'm just going to go down this little rabbit hole. I hope you're okay with it. So reflecting again back on my career, I have been in processes where we felt like we had the technical win, but we still lost the deal. So as a pre-sales engineer, how do you know that you have technical win?
So as a pre-sales engineer, it's pretty straightforward during the earlier times because the technical wins would have not been defined yet. So again, jumping to the F1 analogy, earlier times telemetry data was transferred through wireless, and right now the systems, the F1 cars themselves understand, react to every change that is being happening. So this is again a longer process where if a company is trying to define what technical win is, over the course of their engagement with the prospects, trying to adapt to the market changes. For example, let's take also Zoom because we are often using it. So Zoom before pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, their whole offering has not changed yet, but the positioning in terms of what customers are using for what. Example, education sector had an immense boom when it came to the pre-pandemic part, and Zoom suddenly became one of the top tiers that they have to go to. And suddenly government organizations who haven't used Zoom at all started taking all their government calls in Zooms, which actually helped Zoom understand what their market potential is and then define the technical win for every cohort of customer, read data from it, get better, and then try to understand and build a particular cohort-oriented playbook that makes it easier for them to sell to universities, preschools, say local governments, or even say organizations like WHO. So that's the expansiveness of how larger the technical win can be or the indicators can be if we start tracking the right parameters. Very early on, could be small, but on the overall longer run defines how the technical process also takes place. And this will help the pre-sales consultant very well identify this in the earlier stages to either understand if the efforts that they're going to put in will eventually lead them to be one of the final contestants who are in the deciding process, or for them to understand there are certain items that we don't currently have. For example, if they are not having GDPR compliance, then they can do a tactical diversion to understand how better this can be offered at this stage.
I really appreciate that breakdown. Let's talk about something that you mentioned there, and let's maybe start with the end in mind. Your premise is that the technical win rates are higher than business rates. And I think you just kind of started to allude into that. So tell me what that means and why organizations should care.
This is pretty interesting because, again, John Kerr was the one who brought this up and gave me that spark when I was looking for one. In 2018, he was invited to Freshworks to give us a seminar on how pre-sales has to conduct business. And that's when he shared an insight from a VP of sales engineering. So basically, the VP of sales engineering quoted saying that their POC wins were at 89%, whereas comparing that to the business win, it was around only 59%. So this got me thinking, saying that, hey, if there are efforts being put into closing a particular deal, why is that particular deal not being converted into a business win? And very importantly, a general product analogy is to find all the unknown unknowns and known unknowns before even we jump onto an opportunity. And this particular aspect was missing across the sales process because sales knew what they were doing. Pre-sales did not have that particular segment or categorization, SWOT analysis to get that better. So that's when I started to dig deeper into why technical wins are more compared to business wins. This led me to having a lot of really great conversations with sales and pre-sales leaders from global organizations itself. And I'd like to share my learnings here. From the 90s era, on-premise software leaders like IBM and Oracle walked into customers, gave the solution, and then made sure that the organizational leaders agreed to the software that they were implementing without any feedback from the end user. And pre-sales during these times were just demo engineers who just had to put up something, show a PowerPoint presentation, or even do a mock-up and then do the sale. So these were the times when sales was still very early, wherein it was sales 1.0. During 2000s, cloud software started disrupting the market, and companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow started selling socially through professional networking sites to functional leaders, not the organizational ones, but the functional leaders. And during these times, pre-sales were more focused towards interacting with those leaders, trying to identify what kind of problems they're solving for and match their technical requirements, and started closely working with sales teams rather than just supporting them. So this particular era of social selling was termed as Sales 2.0. And right now, today in the 20s, software is penetrating every segment from enterprise to SMB, every business spectrum, be it horizontal or vertical, and every market, APAC to LATAM. Companies like Freshworks and Zoom are offering free trials and POCs and first-hand experiences to groom these end users and then make them as product influencers within the organization and factor into the purchase decisions directly itself. So this move suddenly disrupted the sales process by removing them from the equation, and pre-sales had to handle the technical and product questions from day one if they have anything. And then got this limited golden window of evaluation time where they can offer the best value to the prospect who's evaluating. This is where pre-sales started to transform. Collaboration started to expand from sales to being a center of influence, because the first information that they got was from the users themselves, which highlighted the usage of the product, the feedback from the market, what really made them choose that product in order for them to create a free trial, and then slowly move along, creating value for every GTM team that is working with pre-sales in collaboration for every opportunity. What we term as is Sales 3.0. In short, sales is evolving, and pre-sales being connected to them should evolve, and the process and approaches also should have a modernization in terms of how they are conducting business with the customers. So when pre-sales is selling a value, the technical closure will link the customer's requirements to the features, the process improvements of what the product can offer to the solution that is being built, and connect the product experiences directly with the outcomes of what the customer is looking for as well. So this defines the offering of how it stands out from the other vendors in the market, and how easy is it for the prospects, the evaluators, the stakeholders to move along the sales and evaluation cycle and acquire the business win. I'd like to quote something which really struck to me when I spoke with a sales engineering leader of a global organization with close to 10,000 employees. He told me these simple words: better the experience, easier the decision, and longer the contracts. And that's what companies should be focusing on when they are focusing on technical wins. It's not the win directly, but the indicators from the win that can help them close longer contracts. And very importantly, without this focus here, if sales are winning, they are winning less. And if they're losing, they're simply losing more, because of what John Kerr had shared earlier. Technical wins 82 and business wins 49. So that's something that the organization should focus on as we move along to Sales 3.0.
Wow, AJ, I feel like that was a mic drop. We should almost just stop the podcast there. That was fascinating. So I'd recommend anybody listening who's maybe not familiar with that example that you just gave us to go back and listen. I haven't heard the Sales 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 theory yet. It is really interesting and fascinating, especially because we try to talk a lot about 3.0 really being that product-led growth motion, and that hands-on user experience with the SE can really be that first touch point with the customer. So that was really fascinating, AJ. I really like that. And you kind of mentioned at the end, tech win rates being at 82% and business win rates only being at 59%. That's a big disparity. So let's talk about these challenges with Techwin then. If you had to simplify the challenges of Techwin, what are they?
So James, before I jump into this, you brought a really interesting point on product-led growth for sales 3.0. But where I would like to take a stand along with the pre-sales community is product-led sales will eventually lead to product-led growth. So no one is actually putting the focus on product-led sales, which is again the free trial, the POC handled by sales and pre-sales together. Pre-sales being the main highlight where they share their product knowledge and say technical discussions. That moves the needle from product-led evaluation to product-led sales. And after the sale gets closed, whatever the product is being used will be used as notifications or product usage metrics, which will be pushed into the PLG systems. And that's what enables product-led growth, which can allow the other users within the organizations to use the tool. And for the companies, those are the indicators that helps in upsell or cross-sell, but not directly closing the first sale itself. So pre-sales, product-led sales, and then comes all the other factors which leads to the product-led growth. It's my take on that.
I appreciate that, AJ, and I don't want to derail us, but I am proud that the second PreSales Collective webinar was called Product-Led Sales. We did this in April 2 years ago with Rob Falcone, who wrote Just F and Demo. And so that was something that we were on the cutting edge of a couple of years ago, and it's interesting to see how that goes. So I don't want to diverge on that topic, but I appreciate you bringing that perspective. So talk to us about the challenges of Techwin.
Again, from my conversations with these leaders on sales 3.0 notion itself, I understood that technical closure should evolve, but there are 3 points which was highlighted across my conversations which hinder this particular evolution for pre-sales itself. So all efforts towards technical closure isn't documented at all. That's number one. And number two, inefficient use of these team resources, which includes human resources, documents, knowledge, transfers, workarounds, battle cards. All of these are inefficiently used due to the lack of data and visibility. The third part is losing out on precious go-to-market potential from pre-sales in spite of being the center of value. These three are primarily the challenges that factor towards what technical closure can become in the future.
I want to dive into these three, right? I think it's the best space to spend some time on the podcast. Let's talk about all effort and time put in the successful Techwin isn't documented. This is one of the things that I know that as a pre-sales leader at Showpad, I created this document called the Solutions Definition Document, the SDD. And we tried to use it to capture all the information in our pre-sales process so that it could be used for a handoff. I can't lie, it was too cumbersome and it was too much energy and too much effort. So we didn't have really good traction on it. But I think that this lack of documentation is something that's pretty prominent. So explain me your thoughts on this.
So today, pre-sales folks primarily use multiple tools, starting from CRM with sales, calendar for their own schedule, product management to share feedbacks to product teams, video conferencing, analytics, RFP, you name it, pre-sales use all these tools. But these are not optimized for pre-sales, but they are optimized for specific function of the native users itself. This does not also encompass all the pre-sales workflows that we would want to define within an organization. So there is no way to properly document the overall influence for every deal across each of these tools and make sense of that at this stage. And moreover, the default reporting available across these tools cater only towards those specific functions, making it difficult to analyze or improve any of the pre-sales influence that is being shared. And like you mentioned, centralizing the data can start in simple steps. So a particular pre-sales consultant, if at all there were a tool to centralize all of this data from different tools, it will be easier for them to just focus on being more creative in solutioning. And all the other data can be just used in the backend by a platform that can really help them evolve. Even if some evaluation or efforts are documented, they're documented towards how it led to a business win. And business one accounts are the only focus for any organization. But technically, one account has all the efforts by the pre-sales put into it. They go to extremes to deliver the best experience throughout their engagement. And yet, if the business account goes to a loss, this particular effort contribution does not get the attention that it needs. So that's the primary stage of it's not what I meant by it's not documented at all.
I like that a lot. And one of the things you actually just kind of highlighted was a bit in the resourcing. And I know that the second thing you mentioned was inefficient use of team resources. I can reflect back on plenty of experiences in my career where we brought the bus, as Rishi Kapoor said in one of our team selling podcast episodes. If I think about cost of sale, and that was one of the things that I like to spend a lot of time on, how much am I paying these people? How many hours did they spend on a deal? What was the deal size? And when you start looking at that, there's some issues there. So talk to me about this inefficient use of team resources.
So pre-sales resources are constantly building and delivering the best solution in every deal assigned to them, period. They don't have any other focus being distracted from the work they're doing, and they should be more creative. But at this stage, pre-sales resources spend most of the time in CRM administration or data hygiene management, and does not get the time for them to spend their efforts and energy in order to be more creative in solutioning. And managers, to some extent, are also stuck in this loop to resolve bottlenecks between sales and pre-sales collaborations and pre-sales and product market feedback itself. So due to the lack of data and time, these resources are often found struggling with high context switching across multiple tools for only one opportunity they're working on, high turnaround time to the prospects because they had to jump on multiple tools to identify, build a solution that can really help them understand the value in very simple terms. And then the inability to access any of the past winning evaluation plans or resources, be it documents, workarounds, be it even a single Slack message that I sent some time ago, 6 months ago for one of my technology customers. To be not available is something that is really difficult. What I also found interesting is that the best pre-sales for the right cohort of customer is often overlooked, and resources are assigned in random or in round robin for SMB and mid-market segments. The best practices, workarounds, and easier to access subject matter experts are not centralized for the teams handling enterprise segments. So these are certain inefficiencies that I found in terms of human resources. And with respect to the onboarding part itself, after the initial onboarding and training phase is complete, they directly jump into taking product demos and working on deals. And once they start working on real opportunities full time, they're always occupied in terms of completing their actions in order to deliver a particular demo and then move along the stage, whereas they have less time to focus on areas of improvement. What kind of skill sets can they work in tandem? There are very few companies which often take the time to build resources or certification courses for pre-sales because their product needs them to be API knowledgeable, NLP knowledgeable, AI focused. And these companies have those resources to get those things done, whereas most of the other companies do not have those internal certifications that can be leveraged by pre-sales for them to have knowledge in terms of what they are working. Not on the product, but in terms of technology, in terms of processes, in terms of the market, and in terms of how the function is evolving with whom they are working.
Very well said, AJ. And again, I like to always reflect back to my own experiences in terms of your answers. But as we talk about this last challenge of losing out on precious go-to-market potential, this is a really interesting one and a fascinating one because I think it puts the pre-sales role at this center of influence, as we like to call it, the pre-sales collective. So talk to me about what this is and why this is the third challenge on your list.
So pre-sales has evolved to become an ideal center for GTM feedback. So let's start there. Because every touch point by the pre-sales team has a direct impact on the GTM process in the overall segment. And that is primarily because of the sales 3.0 notion itself. So for sales teams, pre-sales insights are stored as data entry within Salesforce, but it can be factored for deep dive analysis in terms of how pre-sales and sales can synergize together on every cohort of customer. For product teams, these insights on product usage, what really worked, what did not work, how the pulse of the customer was when we built that solution, presented to them, implemented it for them, is not centralized and not connected back to sales closure, which does not offer any visibility in terms of what kind of product usage should be tracked as metrics. For marketing teams, these insights like battle cards, most used documents, and how these documents can be improved is not centralized and the analytics is just not there. And for customer op teams, these insights from evaluation plans are not transferred to customer success teams for better adoption, upsell and cross-sell opportunities. And I'd like to maybe also highlight from your experience. So Showpad used STDs in order to make that particular transformation from being a prospect to a customer easier. But what happened during this phase is the level of engagement that was given by the pre-sales team just fell because the data wasn't centralized anywhere. So that potential drop will make the customer ops team a lot of time to recover. And during this time, a churn could happen. And during this time, the revenue could drop, or even the upsell or cross-sell opportunities earlier identified by pre-sales and tracked in the Showpad instance would just not be available for them to take it up and then move on. So without access to these insights, it becomes really hard for pre-sales managers and leaders to track appropriate indicators and then convert those indicators into available metrics. And with those metrics, take those decisions in order for the other functions to also make better use of pre-sales being the center in direct touch with the prospects. So this is the potential that the overall GTM organization is also losing because the pre-sales evolution has not yet started. And it's a good thing that the transformation with pre-sales collective is happening right now.
Thanks, AJ. I appreciate that a lot. And I love the Showpad example without much context there. But I think you're exactly right. One of the things that I reflect back on working in startups is just the change management processes to get pre-sales ingrained in the entire organization, right? And I think that's the reason why I have a lot of purviews that I have, is that I was very early stage in a company and was able to just myself see how my team could be working with these different organizations. And we actually just did a podcast on messaging, which is really how pre-sales can be the bridge between the marketing department behind the scenes and the sales team on the field, right? And that is what we want to continue to do, is unlock the power of pre-sales, because again, we believe, you as well believe, that this is the future of sales, right? Unlocking this role is so important. And you're right. How does it play a role in unlocking market potential as it relates to the Techwin? All right, AJ, this has been a fascinating conversation. I feel like I've been absorbing a lot of information here and just thinking about how we apply it to the pre-sales collective. And like every podcast, we need to end with an advice question. What is your advice for pre-sales leaders that are not convinced that the Techwin is the way to go for our profession?
A Techwin is not a performance parameter, and just eradicating the Techwin is not the solution for pre-sales to move ahead with Sales 3.0. But the Techwin is an indicator of product value, solution adoption, and customer satisfaction. So pre-sales should enable prospects to make data-driven decisions, improve the product conviction within a limited period of time, and make sure the stakeholders involved in the decision-making process are also aware of what value the solution can bring to the ecosystem when implemented. These insights will help build the longer journey, and these insights will also be transformational when we are talking about playbooks, which will help these technical wins transform into a defining parameter for the whole pre-sales organizations. A technical win does not stop within the organization, whereas it's also super helpful for every individual who is working on it to understand the impact of sales and pre-sales assignments, complete feedback loop for the product teams, and improve the handover for customers and product adoption for the overall organization itself. I will start the advice here and then concise the advice from now. So pre-sales are ideally the epicenter for GTM intelligence and have a direct impact on sales functions and customer operations. And this function also has the potential to address product market fit and accelerate solution adoption. So some of the pointers that I would like to leave here in this podcast is for pre-sales leaders to start consolidating the right data from the right tools so that it's easier for the pre-sales consultants to develop right indicators when they're working on prospects from the very first call. And these indicators can evolve over time when they have enough information which can be converted from just data to decisions for everyone involved in the organization. The second point is just building one-pagers, James. So one-pagers are more effective when they have minimal information, and this minimal information will help the leaders identify what is more important and make sure that that is included across every opportunity that the pre-sales consultant is working. And on the overrun, this becomes a really strong playbook for every pre-sales organizations, and then take it forward from here. And the final part is with respect to pre-sales intelligence for GTM strategies. I know this is also something that's really interesting, whereas the pre-sales metrics which are at disposal can be mapped to the product insights, marketing requirements, sales operations, and also customer operations. So all of these put together will help pre-sales level up with industry expertise and also take the role of a trusted advisor with every engagement that they have with the prospect. The data shared with these post-sales teams will help them in the best implementation plan and influence the product adoption for the user in the longer run, reducing the churn and by chance also featuring into product-led growth, which will increase the revenue from the unit itself. As a final takeaway, pre-sales is leveling up with GTM functions, and it's time we all recognize this transformation and offer a platform for pre-sales intelligences to run across the organization and redefine sales collaboration, product offering, and customer experience. This should offer required data with right insights and impeccable experience within the golden window of technical evaluation. And in simple words, if teams are winning deals, pre-sales with right tools can win more. And if teams are losing deals, pre-sales with right data and decision can save deals and lose less. So this is my time. Thank you for having me on this podcast, James.
Absolutely, AJ. So well said. Love the quote at the end. Love the advice. It's been a very informative conversation today. Best of luck to you and the PreScale team. Looking forward to meeting you in person when we do our next tour.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine. We are looking forward to meeting you guys in person very soon.
Thank you. All right, PreSales Collective. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Really fascinating conversation with AJ. A lot of times on these podcasts, I find myself learning and absorbing, but hearing how he talked about sales 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 was very interesting as it relates to the evolution of the pre-sales profession. I think AJ really talked about the Techwin and started to reframe how we should think about it. Because for so many people that I talk to, Techwin is just kind of a finger in the air, like, yeah, we got it. No, we didn't. For other organizations, it has a methodology and is deeply ingrained into the go-to-market cycle. But for many, we don't necessarily have the details that we need to be able to have informed decisions on the actual Techwin and its effect on the business. And one of the things that AJ mentioned in the beginning was that so many times the pre-sales role is just looked at as a cost center, when in reality, we all know that that's not true. So the technical win can help with the accountability in the sales process. And the 3 challenges that AJ broke down were really interesting. For all the time and effort we put in the Techwin, it isn't always well documented. There's an inefficient use of team resources, and then really losing out on that precious go-to-market potential, those learnings that pre-sales has. And so I love that AJ and PreScale are creating a product to help bridge that gap in our profession. And so I'm curious, if you have a perspective on Techwin, I've asked this before, please reach out to me on Slack. Would love to continue the conversation. Would love to learn what you're doing at your organization, so we could start really understanding Techwin and its effectiveness in different organizations. All right, PreSales Collective, please do us a favor and like and share the podcast. As always, I will see you next week.